Vancouver area nightclub owner vanishes into thin air.
I felt something was very, very wrong.
Police think he's fled town for a new life under a new identity.
He's probably someone who has gone missing and does not want to be found.
But a psychic sees things differently.
I felt that there was foul play.
And his fiancée refuses to believe he'd ever leave her.
It's like he was like the closest person to me. No way.
Can a psychic help a desperate woman solve the mystery of what happened to Bill Rudy?
I certainly didn't feel like he slipped in the bathtub.
On Canada's Wild West coast, Vancouver, British Columbia is one of the most exciting cities in the world, especially when the sun goes down. In the early 1990s, one of the area's hottest nightclubs was Rumors. Its owner was 51-year-old Bill Rudy. The multimillionaire has investments in nightclubs and real estate, and the cash is rolling in. And Bill Rudy lavished a lot of that money on his fiancée, Janet Bignell.
He used to like totally spoil me, and we'd go out, and everywhere we went, it was always like fun.
The couple were making plans together. Bill Rudy told Janet that he was ready to cash in his chips and start a new life with her in a small town east of Vancouver, near Janet's parents.
What we were going to do is actually liquidate everything and then move to Kelowna. Basically, because Bill and I were going to move, I no longer had my own house because we were going to like be buying a new house.
It seemed like everything was falling into place for Bill and Janet. But then he does something odd. In February of 1994, Bill checks into a local motel, telling Janet he needs to sort out his tangled business affairs before he makes the final move.
He wanted just to take a week and sort all the tax things out and just have peace and quiet where nobody knew where he was.
On Monday evening, February 21st, Bill and Janet spoke on the phone.
He just said that he was just going to get something to eat and then he was going to go to bed. So he did call me that evening, and it was around 9 o'clock.
But the next day, she doesn't hear from him.
I paged him like throughout the day and nothing. Then that evening, we were supposed to go out for dinner. I had a babysitter booked for like 6 o'clock, and still like nothing.
2 days pass, and Janet still doesn't hear from Bill Rudy.
It's like the knot in your stomach. I felt something was very, very wrong.
Desperately worried, she goes to the police, but they don't see the disappearance of Bill Rudy as a top priority.
One of them even said, well, obviously if it was a child, you know, we would take it more seriously. But people, when they're adults, I mean, people can just go away.
But the police are obligated to do at least a routine investigation. They dig around a little and discover that Bill Rudy has one good reason to disappear.
Bill Rudy had an ex-wife who he was still having some problems with and issues.
And as they dig deeper, they begin to believe that Bill Rudy may be missing on purpose.
Rudy was planning to get out of the business, had taken care of his debts, and he was ready to move on.
But Janet refuses to believe that Bill would ever leave her.
People don't know him like on a personal level. Sure, they may know him on a business level, but no way.
A fiancée is not quite the same as a wife, and there are many times where a girlfriend, fiancée thinks that the relationship is maybe further along than it actually is.
But Janet had gone to Rudy's hotel room 4 days after he went missing. What she found convinced her this was not the room of a man who wanted to disappear.
I go into the room and everything is there. The closet's full of clothes, his toothbrush is in the glass, his razor is like plugged in.
Distraught and now dissatisfied with the police investigation, Janet decides to call a psychic.
The motivation was to try to find out what happened to him. I totally believe in psychics, and obviously it wasn't going to hurt.
Janet's friends suggest she contact Lori Mcari, a well-known psychic who lives in Portland, Oregon.
I liked her, and I thought that this was a kind woman who was really in distress, and yet, even under all the stress, she was very, very driven. She was very focused on finding this answer, and I wanted to help her.
The psychic asks Janet to send her information on Bill Rudy right away.
I want a picture, a birth date, and a name, a map of the area where they were last seen.
Lori uses a psychic technique she calls victimology.
I can sit down and just looking at that picture, it's just focusing and allowing it to flow. And I get a story. I get a total story, and I just start writing.
And the story Lori is getting about Bill Rudy is deeply disturbing.
If I weren't a psychic, I would be going, well, gee, this looks like a businessman. And what came through was, we have two people here. We have a man who presents himself as being the honest businessman, and then we have the hidden side. How do you tell this poor girl that her missing fiancé is a really nasty man and I don't like him? But I said it.
I didn't want to believe her. Half of me is still skeptical. Well, okay, it's a psychic. It's not science.
When I said this is a bad man, I believe I recall her saying, I know. He's not perfect.
To Janet, Bill is the man she loves and plans to marry. But the psychic is onto something. The police have discovered that in his business life, Bill Rudy did have a hidden side.
Bill Rudy used a number of aliases in the past, mostly to cover on somewhat shady business deals and houses and mortgages and things, but it showed that he was not above manipulating and fudging the rules.
And Janet did know Bill Rudy had secrets. When they first met, he lied about his real name.
He told me his name was John Andrews. The reason he was using these names is so that his ex-wife couldn't track him, and I totally believed him.
A person who used aliases is not the most honest person in the world, usually using those aliases to his advantage, to someone else's or the government's disadvantage.
But Janet is desperate to find out what happened to the love of her life. Now it seems the psychic is the only one who can help her.
She gave me positive encouragement. She was always available. I talked to her like many times throughout.
Not only has the psychic sensed that all is not what it seems with Bill Rudy, now she gives his fiancée some truly chilling news.
I knew he was gone. It's kind of like they say in the search and rescue world, it is no longer a rescue, it's a recovery.
You know, to me, he still could have been missing, but Lori said no, he's gone.
If the psychic is right, how did Bill Rudy die, and where is his body? Near Vancouver, British Columbia, nightclub owner Bill Rudy has vanished without a trace. The police think he's hiding and doesn't want to be found, but psychic Lori Mcari senses he's dead.
I knew he was gone.
Janet Bignell asks the psychic to come to Vancouver and help to solve the mystery of her missing fiancé.
It was like two forces coming together. She was anxious for me to come up, and I was hoping to put a piece to the puzzle.
Desperate to find Bill Rudy, for Janet, no price is too high. But Lori surprises her.
And I wouldn't have cared how much it cost, and she said no. She said, I don't take money for missing people. And I said, well, why not? And she goes, because then I would lose my gift.
But Lori does have a strange request.
She asked me to make a reservation at the hotel and in the same room from where Bill went missing.
Part of victimology for me is once I've gotten the initial facts, then if it's possible, I want to follow a physical route. I want to see physical surroundings that this person lived in or were around.
As soon as Lori arrives in Vancouver, she heads straight to the hotel. She checks into room 206, the room in which Bill Rudy stayed.
As I sat in the room, I could feel myself looking at maps on a bed, looking at papers, contracts, all the things that assembled his world.
In the room, alone, Lori tunes in again to Bill Rudy's fate. Not only is he dead, but she believes he's been murdered.
I felt that there was foul play. I certainly didn't feel like he slipped in the bathtub.
That was very painful for me to hear as well.
She wasn't all that shocked when I told her that I thought he had been murdered. I think, again, this had been simmering someplace in the back of her mind.
But the Royal Canadian Mounted Police aren't interested in working with psychics. In their eyes, Bill Rudy had deliberately disappeared.
You really can't take it to the homicide squad unless you have fairly good evidence that it's a homicide. In this case, we did not have a crime scene or a body.
Nevertheless, if the psychic is right, what did happen to Bill Rudy? Janet has her suspicions, and they all center around Rudy's business partner and Rumor's manager, David Lowe,
Bill didn't trust him anymore.
in a ploy to hide money from his ex-wife. Bill Rudy had put the Rumors nightclub in David Lowe's name. In return, Lowe had been paying Rudy $5,000 cash a week for over 2 years. But just before he disappeared, the payments started coming up short.
It was the first time that Dave Lowe had not come up with all the money. He's like stalling him and giving him a lot of excuses.
Janet Bignell's word is not enough for the police. They need concrete evidence. For that, she hires Ozzy Caban, a private investigator, to watch and follow David Lowe.
Based on undercover operations, based on street talk and everything else, that was the guy of interest to us.
But even Ozzy can't uncover any new evidence, and Bill Rudy's secret life doesn't help.
We had an individual with about 6 different aliases, businesses all over the countryside. We realize that we're dealing with a situation here that, shall we say, is a little shady, a little on the dark side.
None of that, however, matters to Janet.
All I wanted to do is find out what happened to him.
To do that, she asks the psychic and the private eye to join forces. Maybe they can solve the puzzle of what happened to her fiancé. And Lori thinks the best place to start is at the nightclub.
She wanted to see if she could feel Bill's energy, and I was scared to go.
Ozzy thinks it's too dangerous for Lori to go alone, so he sends an undercover off-duty police officer to protect her. Lori and the cop shoot pool, but her mind is not on the ball. Her psychic senses are telling her details of Bill Rudy's death.
I immediately knew that I was on the right track. Bill Rudy had died here. I knew it. I knew it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
She says she can see how Bill Rudy died. And she says it was a brutal murder.
I felt that there had been a blow to the back of the head. I didn't feel like he had a one-on-one confrontation knowing it was coming. I think it was up behind him and total surprise.
If Bill Rudy has been murdered like the psychic says, was it his business partner? And where on earth is Bill Rudy's body? The psychic believes his body has been dumped in the woods.
What I felt was really surrounding him as, laying there in whatever state he was in was definitely rural.
So Lori and Janet hit the road in search of Bill Rudy.
She wasn't familiar with the area at all, and yet she's the one telling me which way to go.
Yes, I felt the sense, go left, go east, and that's what we did, and it felt right.
We kept driving, and she said, "Don't worry, he's going to be found." And looking at the map, and she says, "I believe he's in the back of Harrison area."
Psychic Lori Mcari has never been to British Columbia before. Yet she marks an area on her map, sensing that Bill Rudy's body lies in the mountains to the east of Vancouver.
Whatever I pointed to, I felt strongly about it. And the problem always is, usually people aren't dumped on a sidewalk, they're dumped in acreage.
In fact, the area Lori circles is the perfect place to hide a body. It's vast, rugged, and remote. They drive all day, but the psychic can't seem to zero in on the exact location of his remains.
I didn't think we were going to find him that day, but I would have been pretty excited if we had found his glasses or his jacket.
Though they come away from the wilderness empty-handed, the psychic is convinced her vision of Bill Rudy's fate is right. But 2 weeks later, there's another twist in the tale of Bill Rudy. His van is found, abandoned at Vancouver Airport. For the police, it's further evidence that he wanted to disappear.
And they said, "Well, we've located his vehicle. We found it at the airport, so obviously he's left the country."
You find a vehicle there, and that's a pretty good indicator that he's gone to the airport to leave.
But when Janet picks up the van, what she discovers tells her it wasn't Bill Rudy who drove it to the airport.
The music was totally loud. Okay, well, that's not Bill. And totally on a radio station that Bill, it was heavy rock or something, and just really, really loud. right? And it's like I had an eerie feeling like driving that van too, right back to Surrey, so.
Has Bill Rudy been murdered? Or has he vanished of his own accord to start a new life under a new alias, as the police suspect? At great cost, Janet remains convinced her fiancé would never leave her, and she continues to search for him.
I just stopped working until I could find out what happened to Bill. So I lost my career. Ultimately, I was evicted from Bill's house with 3 days notice. And I spent all my money. And I remember my dad said to me, you can spend the rest of your life going through the bush looking for him, and you may never find him. And so I was coming to that point, and I never thought he would be found.
Months and then years pass, and the case cools and finally goes stone cold. Then, on September 27th, 1996, 2.5 years later, a logger makes a grisly discovery.
And I looked over and I couldn't believe it. I found a skull.
Suddenly, the Bill Rudy case is red hot. 2.5 years after Janet Bignell's fiancé, nightclub owner Bill Rudy, disappeared, there's a new twist to the story. In September 1996, a logger working in thick forest in the Harrison Mills area east of Vancouver stumbles on the unexpected, a human skull. Psychic Lori Mcari says Bill Rudy's been murdered and his body has been dumped in Harrison Mills.
I felt that there had been a blow to the back of the head.
Will she be proved right? The logger immediately contacts the RCMP. They find a suspicious crack on the back of the skull, but nothing to identify whose skull it is. The skull is shipped to a crime lab for DNA analysis. Because of a huge backlog, it would take almost 2 years for the tests to identify the remains. But when the result came in, incredibly, they confirmed the skull belongs to Bill Rudy. Psychic Lori Mcari was right. Bill Rudy had been buried in the exact area she marked on a map 4 years earlier.
Whatever I pointed to and drew a circle on, I felt strongly about it.
What police thought all along was a missing person case is in fact now a murder. Forensics showed Bill Rudy was killed by a blow to the back of the head, again, just as the psychic had predicted.
I could just feel it, like almost Bill was staying there not expecting it.
After 4 years, the Bill Rudy case is now officially a murder investigation.
In the case of missing persons, that file would be handed over to an active homicide unit. And they would then take over the investigation, review the file, and start over again.
And the first person the RCMP call is Janet Bignell.
He said that human remains had been found through DNA, have been positively identified to be William Rudy. And that's exactly the way he told me. It's really cold.
But she's not prepared for what happens next.
He brought another police officer in there, and then they started recording it. And then ultimately, as time went by, I found out that part of that was because now I was actually a suspect. I couldn't even believe it.
But the person the police are most interested in is Bill Rudy's business partner, David Lowe.
Mr. Lowe told investigators originally that everything was okay, that Mr. Rudy had been paid up and now Mr. Lowe was inheriting the business. It didn't take investigators very long to realize that Mr. Lowe had said things originally that were not true.
But with no crime scene, no weapon, and a very cold case, proving that David Lowe killed Bill Rudy isn't going to be easy. What police do know is David Lowe's lifestyle had changed dramatically since Rudy disappeared.
He's making tons of money, and he didn't invest it back into the club. He went on, 2 or 3 cruises a year, Mercedes, race car.
Lowe's high-rolling lifestyle had caught up with him. He had defaulted on the mortgage and lost the Rumors nightclub. David Lowe was now working as a car salesman and herding for cash. So the police decide to exploit his weakness.
The body was a car salesman, not very good at it, apparently. So not a whole lot of income. So when he realized he could regain some status, some power, get some money, he was just prime for the bait. He wouldn't have been thinking after so many years that now he was becoming a target of a sting operation.
3 years after police confirm Bill Rudy was murdered, an undercover officer known as Jason meets and begins to form a relationship with David Lowe.
Jason was tasked to befriend Mr. Lowe and slowly gain his trust.
Jason convinces Lowe that he's a gangster and tells him he can make big money if he can prove that he too is a bad guy. Finally, David Lowe tells Jason what he wants to hear, that he killed a man. With that admission, Jason tells David Lowe he can now meet his boss.
You've told me a story about a murder, so you got to tell it to the boss to impress him. So he knows that he's not going to make the big money, he's not going to get any status or power till he's in. And this is do or die for him. It's the job interview.
At that meeting, Lowe admits to killing someone.
I whacked the guy. I hit my partner with a hammer.
They got the confession and they got it on videotape.
After a 6-month sting operation, undercover cops arrest and charge David Lowe with the murder of Bill Rudy. Money was the motive.
He missed payments, and basically Bill was going to put the squeeze on him.
His back was against the wall, and he didn't want to lose everything he had in life, and he was going to.
During David Lowe's trial, testimony confirms all of psychic Lori Mcari's visions of the crime 10 years earlier. The murder did take place in Rumor's nightclub, where Lowe crushed Rudy's skull with a hammer. Lowe did take Rudy's body to Harrison Mills and dumped him deep in the forest.
I knew it would come full circle. I knew they'd find him. I knew this would end up being solved.
She totally does have a natural gift, right? And I'll be forever grateful to her for sure.
On July 5th, 2004, 9 years after Bill Rudy had vanished, David Lowe is convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Finally, after 9 years, David Lowe's conviction gives Janet some peace.
And now at least I feel vindicated that the person is caught in jail, and it would have been worse to go through the rest of my life without knowing.
David Lowe is appealing his conviction. Janet Bignell has a new life, but she will never forget Bill Rudy.
I miss him. My life would have been a lot different, but I have learned a lot. I've learned not always to take people at face value.
Pub landlord Mick Hughes is ferociously attacked in the living quarters above his bar. He's battered and beaten over the head and left bleeding to die. After hundreds of hours of investigation, the police are baffled. They just don't have enough evidence to make an arrest.
There was a feeling of a marathon about that inquiry.
Local psychic Angela McGee visits the scene of the crime.
I could see a vision of Mick's body lying under the window. Actually could see his injuries.
Her spirit allies show her the terrible truth.
I got this awful shudder through me. And I realised then that I was actually looking at the culprit.
Can Angela's supernatural visions help bring the brutal killer to justice? Sunday, April 27th, 2003. Police race towards the quiet village of Pelsall near Birmingham, towards the Royal Oak pub. Staff arriving for work have found the body of the landlord, Mick Hughes, brutally bludgeoned to death. Detective Inspector Ian Bamber and Detective Constable Mike Crump have the job of catching the killer.
Mick's body was found in his private bedroom area that was on the first floor of the pub.
He had sustained serious head injuries consistent with him being struck with an object.
The attack had been ferocious, sustained, and really malicious. If offenders had meant to incapacitate him, to render him unconscious or knock him out, you could have easily done that with 1 or 2 blows. But no, they hit him again and again and again. The bedroom upstairs where Mick slept was ransacked.
All the early indications suggested was that it had been a burglary that had gone drastically wrong.
Michael Hughes was a family man, just 2 months away from his 60th birthday. His daughter Sharon is devastated by the news.
You see it on TV, but until you've actually lived it, you can't describe how it destroys you as a person and as a family. You really can't. They asked me and my sister if we could go down to the morgue and identify my dad's body. It was the worst thing I've ever had to do in my life.
Sharon and her family are desperate for justice. But despite weeks of intensive forensic investigation and hundreds of interviews with local people, the police cannot find any conclusive evidence. A neighboring publican decides to call in psychic medium Angela McGee.
I had a phone call from a friend, and she asked me to go down to help with the local murder. And my reaction was, what if they don't believe, you know? I'm not going to go down there and look stupid. I said, I'll wait till I get a message through spirit. I'll wait till the right moment.
Within days, that moment comes.
Well, I had a message from my own father in spirit. It was him that actually told me to go. He said, what about this murder? What about this murder? And then I knew I had to go. I believe that mediumship, you are an instrument of the spirit world. It's not voluntary. You just do what you have to do.
Angela drives to the Royal Oak pub. She's never been here before and knows nothing about the murder, but that is about to change.
I sat there in meditation for a little while, said my prayers, and put my hands up and said, dear God, what have I got to tell these people? With that, I had a vision. I saw 3 men climbing up a black fire escape staircase, over the roof, over the railings, and in through the French windows. And I thought to myself, that is where they've got in this building.
Emboldened by her vision, Angela decides to go in. She is greeted by Beryl Chapman, former partner of Mick Hughes, who is looking after the Royal Oak. Beryl shows Angela to the living quarters of the pub. She stands in the hall. Then suddenly she is shown a second vision.
I could see bodies struggling, as if there was a real push-pull-you type thing going on, and there was blood. It was just a flash, literally a flash, a vision.
Angela goes to the bedroom where Mick met his grisly fate. As she moves into the room, Spirit sends her another terrifying glimpse of the past.
Again, another flash, vision. You could see a vision of Mick's body lying under the window. Actually, you could see his injuries in his head and down the one side.
Now Angela sees something wonderful.
And all of a sudden, I saw Mick in my mind's eye.
The spirit of the dead publican appears standing before her.
And he was making a point of a thick gold chain bracelet which was holding up.
Mick tells Angela that his killer also stole his bracelet.
Mick said that he knew that person, he had drunk with that person, he had fished with that person, he knew that person very, very well. I felt totally aghast. I just thought, take a deep breath here, I can't believe what I've just heard.
It's an astonishing revelation. But before Angela can react, she has another vision. 3 men running away.
It's almost as if they've rushed past me, and if I could feel their panic. But one of them had something the size of a shoebox with him. That's all I saw.
Angela has never experienced such an incredible barrage of visions, but as she leaves the pub, she has the most terrifying insight of all.
As I walked through the pub, I glanced at the bar, and there behind the bar was a young man pulling pints. I got this awful shudder through me, complete coldness. I just felt that there was complete emptiness there, as if it got no soul. And I realised then that I was actually looking at the culprit.
Not waiting to see his face, Angela runs from the pub. If she's correct, the killer is still right under the noses of the police. Landlord Mick Hughes has been brutally murdered above his pub, the Royal Oak, by person or persons unknown. Psychic Angela McGee has visited the scene of the crime. Her spirit allies sent her an astonishing series of visions containing clues about the murder.
I saw the vision of 3 men going up to the back fire escape staircase. I then saw Mick's body. I saw Mick himself. I saw 3 men leaving with something the size of a shoebox. I glanced at the bar and I realised then that I was actually looking at the culprit.
Despite months of painstaking investigation, the police still don't have enough solid evidence to make an arrest.
And when there was a feeling of a marathon about that inquiry.
There was a great deal of information coming in that was being looked at, but little that was helping us to get to the bottom of what had actually happened.
The police are running out of options when fate leads them to Angela.
In the course of my inquiries, I met a woman who had met Angela McGee at one of her psychic meetings. This woman stated that Angela had discussed the murder with her.
We decided that whilst the evidential opportunities might be limited, it would really be foolhardy and a bit ignorant not to at least go and speak to Angela.
Mike Crump and a colleague go to Angela's house to interview her.
She invited us in. She made us a cup of tea, and we spoke to Angela about what she knew.
Angela tells the police about her vision on the fire escape and of the body in the bedroom. She had no way of knowing these things, but her account matches closely what police found in forensic examination.
I was startled and sceptical, equally curious and intrigued.
Now she really begins to surprise the police.
She claimed that 3 men had been involved in the murder and that one of those men had known Michael Hughes.
It sounds incredible, but Angela's information fits with a number of theories the police are working on.
To put numbers on offenders raised some eyebrows, but from analysing the scene and trying to generate some hypotheses around what had happened, I think we were all fairly comfortable that it was more than one.
She'd had a vision of them running away, one of them carrying a shoebox-shaped object.
The police know what Angela does not, that a safe the size of a shoebox was taken from the pub.
We clearly knew that the safe had been ripped from its housing, so to hear Angela describe a box-shaped object being carried by a man was fascinating.
Angela's visions confirm facts the police already know or things they suspect.
Her account fitted in on a number of features with the hypotheses that we were running on. The difficulty for us was trying to match any evidential facts that we knew about with Angela's vision.
At the time of speaking to Angela, I was a little cynical and sceptical about the information she was providing, but in the fullness of time, it was quite surprising how accurate some of the information she provided turned out to be.
Angela has given the police fresh clues, but for now, they don't know what to make of them. The lead officer tries to reassure Mick's grieving family.
He'd come out and he'd explain there is things happening and we are working, but obviously we can't tell you everything in case it leaks out or in case it's wrong information we're receiving. He said, but trust me, we will sort this out and we will come one day with the answers for you.
For the police, the pressure is on. Then Angela McGee has another startling revelation.
I woke up the one morning, as I do sometimes, with messages. What I kept getting in my mind was a dolphin, block switch, dolphin, block switch.
Angela phones a friend to tell her about the message.
I was telling her about, I'm sure this is to do with the murder. I was getting the dolphin, Bloxwich, a dolphin, Bloxwich. And she said, there's a dolphin pub. I wanted to relay that information to Mike Crump, so I gave him a call.
Operation Greenside, DC Crump speaking, how can I help you?
And I told him about the dolphin and Bloxwich, and that something would happen in 3 days. All of a sudden, I get a name.
Yeah, OK, listen, you've just got a pad and I'll just write it down.
I felt it was more like a nickname of either Daz or Gaz. And I felt that was also associated with murder.
Angela's information is relayed to the incident room, but for now, it's useless. Then, the police make a key discovery. They find the missing safe in a canal.
This is the canal at Slacky Lane, from where we recovered the safe that was from the Royal Oak pub. It was a breakthrough. It is important that we recover physical evidence such as the safe.
Suddenly, Angela's message about the dolphin becomes clear.
And the Dolphin Public House is situated just at the top of the road, about 150 yards away from the spot where I'm standing now.
There is no earthly way that Angela could have known this.
At the time that Angela spoke to us about the Dolphin Public House, there was no obvious connection between that pub and our investigation. It hadn't featured at all. At the very least, it was interesting.
Police are left wondering about Angela's message of the nickname.
The difficulty for us, where do you put Angela? What do you do with what Angela can tell you? And the problem is that you can't use it, can you? You can't ask Angela to step into a Crown Court witness box and on oath say, I'm a medium and I know what happened. It's completely inadmissible.
To convict, they still need more concrete evidence. Then, exactly 6 months after the murder, the Royal Oak pub is burgled again. This time, police get the lead they've been waiting for.
Bizarrely, on the exact 6-month anniversary of Mick's death at the pub was broken into again in very chillingly similar circumstances.
This time, eyewitnesses recognize the thief. Part-time bartender Gavin Chapman, son of Beryl Chapman, Mick Hughes' partner at the Royal Oak.
Gavin Chapman had a severe drug problem. We believed he was addicted to heroin and possibly crack cocaine. Michael Hughes was always quite suspicious that Gavin was taking money from him in various forms in order to fund his drug addiction.
The police had always suspected Gavin Chapman might be involved in the murder, but he has an alibi with 2 other men, Stephen Lockley and Lee Worgan.
We had evidence that cast doubt on their movements in terms of the accounts that they had given. But as far as convicting them for a murder was concerned, we had very little.
Now the police take a gamble. They bring all 3 men in for questioning. One by one, the men are interrogated and their stories scrutinized.
In the initial stages, they stuck by their witness statements.
I think they thought that if they maintained their original pack of lies, that they would walk. I'm sure that they were that blasé and confident that they thought that they could just bluff it out.
Relatively quickly into the interview process, one of them changed the story.
And they began to point the finger at each other.
The men confess to burgling the Royal Oak on the night of the murder. They accuse each other of being the killer. Police decide to charge them all with murder as a joint enterprise. It's a bold strategy.
There was a concern that was at the back of my mind that around that joint enterprise argument, the jury wouldn't be able to clearly identify in their own minds who it was that struck the fatal blows.
We felt that we had a very good and a very strong case, but you are in the hands of the jury.
You're hopeful, but you've always just, you're crossing 2 fingers and hoping for the best.
The trial is set for October 2004 in Birmingham, with 3 men charged, at least one of whom knew Mick and worked behind the bar. Everything that Angela told the police seems to be coming true. Gavin Chapman, Lee Worgan, and Stephen Lockley are set to be tried for Mick Hughes' murder. Waiting for the result, Angela goes on with her normal work as a medium.
It was a few months later, after I had my visit to the Royal Oak, that I had a phone call.
Carol Hall has lost her mother and wants a medium to contact her in spirit.
I had no previous knowledge of Angela before this phone number was handed to me. In fact, she was one of about 4 numbers that were handed to me. And the reason I picked Angela was because she was the one more local, because I didn't know if there was a radius to how far they'd travel. And, like, the address was pretty local, so I thought I'd go for Angela.
Angela visits Carol one evening at her home.
Angela sat in the bedroom and I sat on the chair, more or less opposite to her.
The spirit of a mother came through, and I felt that a mother's energy was all around the bedroom where we were. And I told Carol that her mother was with her son in spirit.
We got to talking about it, and then they just said, which was the devastating bit, who's Michael? And that was when I just went to pieces, and I says, that was my brother. And she said, your mum's telling me she called him Michael, everybody else called him Mick, which was spot on.
Then all of a sudden, I had a flash of the Royal Oak and a flash of Mick in my mind. And I said, it's Mick from the Royal Oak murder.
The look on Angela's face, it couldn't be captured on tape when she suddenly realised who she was talking about. She said, he keeps telling me, I've been there, and he says, can I ask, is it the pub in Palsall? And I says, yeah.
It's an amazing revelation. Angela didn't know it, but Carol Hall is Mick Hughes' sister. Mick's spirit has sought her out again.
I could hear Mick say that he would see justice, and he would see justice 3 times. All I heard was justice, justice, justice. And then I says to Carol, I can see the family with their hands up in the air in triumph. And he also said something about Stafford and time, which I had to relay, which didn't make sense to me at the time.
With the trial hanging in the balance, Angela's message gives comfort to Carol.
With my brother coming through via Angela and saying that justice will be done, she was so right with Mum. I wanted this to be so right as well.
But until the jury gives their verdict, the family can only hope that Angela's telling the truth. Just days before the trial is due to start in Birmingham, part of Mick's message becomes clear. Another case has overrun. The trial is moved to Stafford Crown Court.
The court case, up until the Friday prior to the Monday's date for the court case, was going to be Birmingham, then it was going to be Wolverhampton, and on the Monday we had to go to Stafford, which was uncanny, very uncanny, because we weren't aware of that, nobody was.
For police and the family, it's a tense time.
You've always got that element of doubt in the back of your mind, and you're worried about how the jury will perceive the evidence that you feel is very strong, and how your witnesses will come across as well.
The trial runs for 3 long weeks.
I was struck by how appallingly badly the 3 male defendants conducted themselves throughout the whole trial. They sat at the back of the court and grinned, chuckled to each other, made smug comments about some of the witnesses that appeared in the witness box. And when they were ultimately asked to give evidence, they made the worst job of it I've ever seen in my life. They were absolutely appalling. They were flippant, clearly telling lies. Chapman was asked whether he wanted to take the oath, and his very first words to the jury were, whatever. He did himself no favours.
To hear people read it out as to the horrific injuries and how they occurred and how many times they hit my dad, that was really hard. And at one stage my mum and my 2 brothers had to leave because they couldn't cope, because to everybody else it's a story, To us, it was our dad.
Finally, the moment of truth arrives.
When the jury went out, the courtroom is charged with emotion.
It's all right, I'm just sitting there thinking, please God, let him say guilty.
The three men are found guilty. As Angela predicted, justice has been done 3 times.
Each of the 3 men were convicted of the murder of Michael Hughes. They were also convicted of burglary and attempting to pervert the course of justice in terms of having lied to us in the form of their witness statements.
It was just unreal. It was a dream come true.
As the family leave court, a photographer is waiting.
He said, well, for the picture, you're going to have to punch the air and smile.
In a flash, Angela's last vision becomes reality.
But when I saw them, their hands go up, and I thought, yeah, that's completed the picture now.
Angela's messages to the police and the family seem to have proved uncannily accurate.
On speaking to Angela initially, I was quite cynical and sceptical about the nature of the information she provided. But in the fullness of time, aspects of it turned out to be quite accurate. Whilst it was always of limited value to us as police officers, this was nevertheless surprising.
Stepping outside the police officer function and thinking about myself as a person and Carol and Sharon spending some time with Angela, if I found myself in the same circumstances and I saw that olive branch of hope, would I reach out for it? Yeah, I probably would.
It's been an incredible experience for Angela.
I feel I've done my job's worth. I know that I work for the God Energy Force and the God Energy Spirit, and I'm just an instrument. But to me, it's like a pat on the back, I think. It was just a nice pat on the back.